So again, welcome back to the afternoon session of the first day of LibreFest. For those of you that were concerned about that during the lunch break, I updated the Zoom uh, client. So now it has a different feel. I was able to figure out how to approve the captioning. So for those of you that need access to the caption, you should be able to turn it on your specific client. Uh, uh, and if there are any questions or concerns, please let me know. I know it took a little bit of time for me to be able to parse through that or try to parse through it earlier this thing. Tom asked the question is, will the Zoom link be for the entire week? That will be the link for the entire week. I'm pretty sure. Jennifer, am I incorrect on that?
No, the link is the same.
Okay, thank you. So off you go. I will post up the schedule for tomorrow. I was going to do that over lunch, but got stuck dealing with upgrades. Technically we have office hours from 8 to 9 o'clock. So if you have any questions or concerns based off of what you did today, you can come to 8 or 9 o'clock in order to be able to address that. For those of you that know that we normally have office hours Tuesdays and Thursdays from 9 to 10 o'clock, we're basically moving that up 1 hour. But no doubt there are going to be some people who are going to try to jump in and we're not going to be able to address it. So Sarah asked a question, are the latest presentation slide decks available for the last session? Yes, I uploaded those. You'll see them in the assets section of the conductor page. I will try to share. There's the share button. To show you that in the conductor page itself. I am also processing, as you can see on the screen, the video from this morning. I probably have them uploaded onto YouTube by this evening if everything is going well. So in order to look at the slide deck, if you go to your project, I have a lot of projects here. So if you go to sign into this, you'll see your conductor page, and then down here you see a presentation slide deck. And then you click on that and it'll have these 3 slide decks, including the 2 presentations I did and the one that Christina Moon did right here. And they are all, actually, only mine is public to the commons. The other ones are only to us on here. I don't see a reason not to open it up publicly, but I will let Christina chime in if she has a concern about opening up her presentation for that. So, looks like I don't see any outstanding questions. Anyone have any questions that haven't been addressed that want those questions to be addressed before we get going? Okay, so we are recording and everything looks fine. So just as a summary of what we did before lunch, we were able to make courses. We were able to make assignments. We're able to add questions to the assignment. So those are the core components associated with using Adapt. Now, there are lots of nuances and issues associated with the nature of the courses, the nature of the assignments, and the nature of the questions and how you use the questions. What we didn't talk about is how to create a new question. Which we're going to go through topically, and there are a handful of other issues that can come up from different points and such. So let's just spend a moment talking about some of the things that I skipped over, and then we'll start talking about building new questions. So I'm going to go to Adapt. I'm going to go to my course area. Here's my course. I was making new course. Everyone has a new course. Everyone has an assignment. For those of you that got an account later on, hopefully you're able to catch up during the lunch break. If not, we have, again, 90 minutes after this next 30 minutes in breakout rooms in order to be able to address these things. So I'm going to go to my assignment here. And then we have a handful of options right here. So I skipped over all of these things for time purposes, but I do want to mention a few things. I'm going to skip over case studies because it requires a little bit more discussion behind it, because there's really some cool dynamic aspect there is created for the next generation nursing. Summary of an assignment tells you all the properties associated with the assignment that you may want to be able to get at a glance. Properties are the assignments that we we this modal that we've modified. Again, you guys don't have this auto release option on here, but you will soon. So I'm going to skip over that. Now I want to talk about these toggle switches that we have in a variety of places. So the toggle switches in the control panel acts as a circuit breaker of sorts, and it lets you release certain things to the students at certain times. So for example, this assignment, I can flip a switch here, and if I flip the switch from hidden to shown, then the students were going to see the scores that they have gotten on that assignment, period. That is oftentimes for delayed questions. The switch is flipped after the deadline, so students don't see what their scores are going to be beforehand. But if it were real time, they can get it open like that. So you have control over when students get the scores. You can have control when students see the solutions. So there may be reasons that you feel you don't want the students to see the solutions, but you may want them to see their scores or their performance on those questions, and you can flip those things individually. If you decide that you want to, you can actually release the statistics. That is, basically the students are able to see the histogram, see their performance for the assignment compared to other students that are out there. That's the typical question that you would expect for students when they take an exam, and asking what's the standard deviation, what's the mean, and basically how do they perform compared to those two. This is variable because if the course is too small, then the statistics make no sense at all. So you need to have a decent number in your population in order for the statistics to make sense. And for it to really make sense, I think the number needs to be somewhere around 50. So it's useful for large classes, less large classes. It's up to you to decide if you want to release those to the students. There are additional components that many people don't deal with, but you have the ability in order to release, including the points per question. If you want to, you can show the students the question titles. Normally, the students just see question 1, question 2, question 3, question 4. One of the reasons that we do that is that we have questions that come from a variety of different sources. Different authors have different criteria that they use for naming the pages, not the pages, the questions that they use. And sometimes it may look like a complete hodgepodge of mess to the students. And it's meant not to confuse them, that they just know these are the questions that they're working off of. However, us as authors have the ability to see the true question title. That is the title that is connected to the question in our database that the author created for its use. This is an option that I will mention is worthwhile in order to comment on. I have the ability to flip a switch here such that if students, graders, the ones that do the auto grading, see the questions, they no longer see the names of the students. They actually just see a universal user ID number, which is basically a hash set of numbers and letters. That makes it easier in order to ensure that the grading has no bias. We're going to expand that to allow faculty to flip that switch on their own, so that if they want to, for most of the time that they're operating with the course, they'll have no names connected to the performance. And that way they can actually make an argument that they are truly grading in a blind fashion. And then when they need it, for example, if they need to do a review with students' performance or such, they can flip the switch in order to be able to identify that. Okay. Submission overrides. This gives you the ability to, after a course has been created, an assignment's been created with dates and times, you can come in and provide an override of specific aspects associated with how students can interact with the question. So you can say, this student here gets an override for this question here because there's some reason that I feel that student should have the ability in order to do the question without the dates, the times for start date or end time that's connected to that. So it's a real quick and dirty in order to say student's grandmother dies, you come in, flip a switch, and then they're able to address the things that are out there. It has a handful of other powerful things, not overly important here. Okay, auto-graded submissions. That's actually gives you a report of the submissions that students have graded on us. This gives a greater access, so you can decide who has access to this assignment. Statistics, open grader, I mentioned before, it's not going to look terribly impressive because we don't have any questions available in this assignment. Assignment gradebook and course gradebook are not overly important, other than emphasizing that Canvas has a single gradebook that has students and assignments, but the actual gradebook should be a cube that has students, assignment, and question. So you're able to come in and modify a student's performance on a specific question and have all the math and everything handled appropriately. So we have two gradebooks in order to deal with that. One is a course gradebook that tells you the performance per assignment, and one's the assignment gradebook that tells you the performance per question. And that's something that that Canvas doesn't have, but this gives you a lot more power in order to be able to flip the switch. And then you could do analytics dealing with individual questions. Canvas doesn't put that into their gradebook. They fold that into their analytics, but it's useful in order to be able to control that at the gradebook. So it's a bit more power than what you have in Canvas. So anyways, I wanted to look under course properties, not assignment properties, which has a different set of properties here. And the one that I want to talk about right now is this non-updated revision, because this is actually particularly important with one of the major criteria or the major goals that you're going to have in this 90-minute breakout room. So here's the deal that we have. We have this large corpus of questions. And then we have an instructor comes in, and instructor builds assignments from this corpus of questions. What do you do when the author of a question comes in and modifies that question? You, as a user that's using that question, don't want your course, your assignments, the questions in your assignments to be modified based on that instructor changing his or her question that you are using. So in order to try to address that, we introduced a versioning system so that every question has, when you save it, at least for some of the types, you can come in and someone modifies it, when you pull that question into your assignment, you're looking at only the version at the time that you pulled it in. So if it continues to be edited after the fact, you don't have to accept it. That means that if you have an exam, you don't want the questions on the exam while the student's taking the exam to change for you. So you need to have this versioning infrastructure to facilitate that. And you'll see that. And that is part of the aspect associated with trying to operate a community corpus, a community commons, but still have the integrity in order to be able to preserve the fidelity for your class. This sometimes reflects the way we organize our textbooks with essential bookshelves and the campus bookshelves, with a few additional aspects called transclusion, which I'll be talking about in a few days. There was a question that popped up here in terms of, can you change the license? You can change the license in any meta tags that you have connected to it. I'll talk about some of the implications of changing licenses after the fact in terms of compliance and how people if people do it. But as long as people use the questions on the adapt infrastructure, you're fully compliant with any license that you actually use. So so when we actually do this, we'll have this list of questions that are available, and I'm going to go to this course here, which I think will have a set of questions that need to be updated, because I have several students working on this, and unfortunately none of them have updated. Okay, here we go. So I've had students that have updated 13 questions in this question bank, this course, because they're going through and they're updating the solutions, updating the code and things like that. So I can come in and say, well, question number 1, this is the ID number. Here is the old question. Here's the new question. And then I can basically see that, yes, Jared did modify something. He just tweaked, I guess he changed the number here. So he felt that this number was incorrect and it needed to be fixed. And I can come in and I can update the question right there. That will wipe out all student submissions. That's part of the nature of the database. And there you go. Or I can update all questions off of here. So this versioning system gives you the ability to ensure that your questions will be maintained, at least if it's native and web work. H5P and iMath AS don't have the system in it yet, but we're working on ways in order to be able to implement that so that you can actually preserve the integrity, but still have the flexibility associated with a community corpus and moving forward and such. So Nadia asked, what are you selecting to see this revision scene? On the in the course itself, under course properties, there's a thing that says non-updated revisions. And that's basically gives you a list of the revisions that have not been updated. Yep. And you can flip a switch in order to make that automatic if no students have enrolled in the class, which means that you don't have any database issues that are not important in order to discuss. So, okay, now, like I said, there are a lot more details associated with using this in various aspects. We don't need to discuss that right now. We'll be talking about this in more detail tomorrow. What I want to be able to do is to get you to learn a little bit about a little bit more about building new questions, which were some of the questions that popped up before lunch started. So let me get out of this course and back into my new course area. I have my new assignments. And besides the general approach for you to be able to look and find questions that you feel are appropriate and add those questions in assignments and flesh out the course as you see fit, you'll be interested in being able to make questions. I do want to mention that there are different ways that you can use to find questions. While you're finding them, you can do a search like I showed before. You can also browse through other people's public courses. So if I click on here for public courses, I then have all the public courses right here, and I can do a search off here. It's going to look slightly different from you, but right now I can come in and say, I want to see physics courses. What is it? Not, you don't have that button. So this will show up all the courses that deal with physics. It just makes it easier in order to be able to address it. We'll start to talk about minor derivations of this thing, so you can have a hierarchy of physics / university physics, physics / college physics, physics / modern physics, etc. But this gives you an overview of all the physics courses that you can look at questions and use them as effectively. Some of the questions will be auto-graded, some will be open integrating. It's up for you to decide which ones you actually want to look at and such. So for example, if I wanted to look at language, I can do that and then look at all the different courses that deal with language. Most of them are Spanish, which I blame Christina Moon for that, but some of them are French, which also comes predominantly from her campus, some Russian, some American Sign Language and other components off of there. So browsing other people's courses is a good mechanism in order to say, okay, I like this course. I'm going to copy this code and save it somewhere, or I add it directly in the same mechanism that we did before. So you could find questions by searching, or you could find questions by browsing. To be honest, I find browsing particularly effective because you're following the structure of someone else's course that have identified how they want to organize the questions in a way that may resemble how you actually teach. And the more courses that we have available, the more likely you're going to find a course that someone else has taught and has formulated that you're happy with. So what I want to talk about is building of questions. So at any time, if I go to the dashboard, again, I have my courses, my questions, my learning trees, and my assignment templates. If I go to my questions, I go to that fourth layer that I was talking about. Remember, it's a course assignment question, and then down below has the actual question. Let me phrase that, the library of questions that's out there. And this right here looks at my snippet. That is my part of that library that I have control over. That are my questions, quote unquote, that I have the ability to edit, update, change the licensing in order to make Nadia happy. I have the control in order to be able to do that on these questions. And every other question, I don't. So it may seem that the situation is such that either you use it or you don't, and that's it. However, that's not entirely true. But before we get into that, I just want to show you the structure of a question, and then we'll talk about how to work with these. So here are questions. So I'm going to look at my Chem 4B question. So these things are not auto-graded. Let me find a question that's out here. Most of my things are Okay, so here's a question, and I'm going to edit this question. Uh, so a question structure in ADAPT has four super blocks. The first super block is the meta information, the meta tagging, all the stuff that's connected to the question, but not actually part of the question itself, including titles, including what type of question it happens to be. We're only dealing with questions, not exposition or reports. That's something different. And there's public, what folder I have it stored in my area, the authors, the licensing, the license version number, the source information, which is required for Creative Commons licensing, meta tag that's important for identifying and finding this question. This one here, for example, deals with algebra. If I have a framework, which is a set of learning objectives or set of taxonomies that I want to use for cataloging questions, I can actually identify that. For example, if I pick something like chemistry's open learning initiative, I could find their question of learning skills or learning outcomes and align my questions to that so that I'm able to demonstrate proficiency or at least identify if I've met my learning objectives in the syllabus that I had put down. Let's skip over that for today. We'll talk about more tomorrow. The second super block is the content block. That's the content, that's the block information that students see. And what they see are two blocks added together. They may or may not each have content in them. The HTML block is a standard block of HTML, so the sort of rich text that you'd be using if you were writing in Canvas or any other learning management system. And the other block below is the auto-graded technology block. So that right there gives you the ability in order to select what type of technology you want to use. This one here is using something from the WebWork question bank, not the ones that we created, and it gives a path connected to it. Most of the new ones, you have the ability in order to write in and customize your own text that's out there. The third block is the accessibility block. And that right there is meant for alternatives. So for those of you that have had interactions with accessibility experts on your campus, you're probably used to the argument that they tell you is that either something is accessible and you can use it, or something's not accessible and you can't use it. That's not entirely true. You can use something that is accessible. Let me phrase that. You can use something that's not accessible as long as you have an accessible alternative in place for the students that require it. That's perfectly allowed within WCAG. Well, actually, it's more within ADA in order to be able to facilitate that. And that's what we do here. So if you are using a question that's auto-graded that is not accessible, remember I mentioned most of the interactives and the assessments of H5P question types are not accessible by California standards and even by American standards. You could still use it as long as you have an alternative that is accessible. So for example, many questions like drag and drop, where you're able to see something and you drag a mouse something and you put it into different spots, that right there is great if you have fully functioning eyes. But if you're vision impaired, you're unable to do that problem. So what do? Well, if you follow a rigid definition here, you just can't use that question, period. However, if you could formulate that question to a series of multiple choice questions, which oftentimes you can, each multiple choice question is accessible. So therefore, the alternative is accessible. Is it clunky? Yes, it's clunkier than being able to drag and drop. But if you are visually impaired, you're unable to do that. And if you have that alternative in place, you could then use inaccessible content that is useful for 99.9% of the students and still have the ability in order to be fully compliant with ADA. Yeah, and that is one of the features that I don't know of any other platform that has something similar that's available. The alternatives you have is just a simple text version. That means you're converting it to open-ended, or you can add an auto-graded technology question that you pop in here where you just paste in the ID number here, and then it uses that as the alternative. The last block or super block has four sub-blocks: an answer block, a solution block, a hint block, and a private notes block. So you can think of it as annotations or discussions around that question that may be of particular interest to you. If if you write in stuff with the solutions, that will show up in the solution box. A lot of our effort is to flesh out pedagogically useful solutions, because the last thing we want is to have a question where the answer that the students see is 5. And it doesn't tell you about where that number 5 comes from, and flesh it out in more detail. And that's what a lot of my students' work is, in order to flesh out the solution, so it's actually pedagogically useful, so that students can learn from that. And answers are oftentimes the answer 5, where you may not want the actual solution to be shared. So anyways, the typical question again is 4 super blocks. Each one has constituent components in order to be able to master off of here, or not to master, but in order to be able to enable that. So let's build a quick question, and then I'm going to have you do what's called cloning, and then you can get into your breakout rooms. So I'm going to go back to my courses, new course, new assignment. And before we just added questions, that's adding existing questions, let's talk about new questions. So click on new questions, and it pops up that same block that we just showed, but now it's blank. Okay. At this point here, when we save this question, it will save the question in my question area, which is which you can access under my questions, and it will put it into this assignment automatically, which makes it easier. So you don't have to find the question and then add it. So this is a typical question. So I'm going to come in and say new question. The description off of here, this is the best question in the world. I'm going to keep it as a question. You don't know what these things mean, don't worry about them. I'm going to make this a public question, which means that you're able to do other people can do a search and find this question. I then decide where I want to store this question in my question area, because it has to be stored in the 4th layer, the library. Everyone has main, so I'm just going to pick main for it. You could build your own question area and organize them in different ways. Personally, I prefer to use the courses as a mechanism to organize the questions, but you can organize them on the back end. I can decide I'm the author. I can decide what license I want, CC BY NC share alike. I can say I want 3.0, 4.0, doesn't matter. I have a source ID. By default is using adapt for here. However, if you copy this from somewhere else, some repository where you're not the intellectual property owner, it's important in order to make sure that you write the URL for the source there in order to be compliant with the license that the intellectual property owner put on that question. I can assign tags like Spanish, and at any point I can save this question. Okay, it wants to have some content here first, so I can save the question right here. And now it made that question. The reason that I saved here instead of continuing it is it shows that you don't need to complete every single thing at the first time, because you may want to add a lot of content to your question. It's not important off here. You may just want to quickly put some stuff into your question, organize it, and then you're going to go back in order to address it. So I can come back and click on that question again. Actually, anytime I do this, see this question mark right here, and this pencil, not question mark, click on it, and I pull up the question. I can continue editing. And so I pick content right here. So what students see here is a combination of this block and this block. Now, there's nothing in the auto-graded block. So if I go down here and I do preview, I can see that the students just see content. So this is a real quick and dirty way in order to make an open-ended question. This is an open-ended question. How cute is my dog? Derpy. And this is what students would see. Okay. When I use that question in my course, I can then add an auto-grade component to it that just adds text block that they can then write it in. And then I use the auto-grader. I can even make it audio that they have to tell me how great my question is verbally instead of writing it down, how great my dog is, like that. So there are a few questions coming up here. Okay, because is there a way to see only the formative questions which can be more freely used? Yes, you can do a search off of that. And I'll show it to you in the search search system in a moment. Carlos asks, do you do the same process for both multiple choice questions and essay questions? Yes. So far, everything is the same, irrespective of what the nature of the question is. So let's talk about the nature of the question, and Christine, I'll end with you. So now, if you want to do multiple choice, so have auto-graded component, I can come in here and now I decide this is going to be a new question. I'm going to decide what type of technology I want to use. So if I want to use native, WebWork, or iMath AS. If you build an H5P, the fourth of those things, it will, when you create it in the studio, it will automatically create a question in audio, in Adapt for you. And it will be added to your question area that you're able to work off of. So you don't actually use this procedure for Adapt. You already have the question created, and then you can modify it after it's done. And that's just because it's a different platform that's folded together. So if I want to use native, it wants me to delete this part, collect native, and now I have an option in order to be able to select basic, nursing, sketcher, or all. These are options available. Basic is QTI. It should probably be called core, to be honest. It's the same interface because it's the same protocol that's used in your learning management system. So making multiple choice questions, you can type in the prompt, you have correct answers, incorrect answers, and you can add various entries to this in order to be able to expand it, just like you would in your learning management system, or true false, or numerical. These are all standardized protocols out there. Nursing is more complicated. And if anyone wants to learn more about nursing, you need to learn a little bit more of the details behind that. And I think we have some construction information regarding this. And I know that we have some other protocols in Wisconsin associated with that. If I can't find it, please let me know. If you can't find it, let me know. Sketcher is that organic chemistry question. This was something that came up earlier on today. And this right here gives me ability in order to build an organic molecule and submit that for correction in order to see if the students can rebuild that question, that molecule subject to whatever the prompt happens to be right here. This is so new. This has only been out here for 2 hours. So if you feel like you want to play with it, feel free to do so, but we haven't had the chance in order to have many people touch it. In fact, you'd probably be the first people in order to touch it outside of our development team. Nilanthi asked, what is the common type of license we should select in general if we create our own course? Well, the licensing is entirely up to you. Assuming that you use a Creative Commons license, there's a can't remember what it's called, a Creative Commons
User.
Well, it was
Chooser.
Chooser.
Creative
That's what
Commons
it is. Yeah,
Chooser.
it's a very peculiar name. That's right. So I don't have time in order to talk about licensing right now because it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of alcohol in order to discuss properly. Take a look at the link that I just popped in the room. It didn't pop up, did it? Oh, okay, there we go. And it goes through some of the requirements or aspects associated with Creative Commons licensing. It's entirely up to you deciding how you want it to work. I'll be talking about licensing in a couple days, so we can discuss that in more detail. But for all intents and purposes, if you use things on Adapt, you're fully compliant with licensing. Okay. Let me go back to native questions. I encourage you in order to play with native questions to begin with before starting to think about more advanced questions. For those of you that are comfortable with web work, you can click on web work here, and now you have text here that you can actually write web work. Now, if you're unfamiliar with web work, this is actually a multiple choice question. This is what the code looks like. If you understand the code, it works well. If you don't understand the code, I understand. It took me a while in order to master it, and it becomes difficult in order to be able to do it again. It doesn't mean you can't use the questions already created. It just means it may be more difficult in order to do. iMath AS, like in my open math, has a similar infrastructure, just a different language that's involved in it. But this gives you full power, being able to construct anything you want, subject to really big, or very little limitations that are that. And such. So I encourage you to build questions based on native. And then I can save that. Now you don't have propagate, you'll just have notify when you save a question. And what that means is that every time you save it, you have to say, explain why you updated it. You can just say updated and it doesn't matter. You can go into detail saying, I tweaked this, I tweaked that. It has a question, if a student has submitted answers for this question that you've been updating, it will ask you to clear out those questions because you might have manipulated the data, the nature of the question, which would manipulate the nature of the database. So I'm just going to do that. And now I've updated the question. I have this propagate thing that you guys don't have that circumvents that because I'm able to tell whether a question is going to interfere with the tables in the database, but the average person does not. So that's how you build a question. You're gonna be building questions in your chat room. The only thing that I want you to be able to mention, I want you to be able to do is to recognize how to use this this button right here. So Christina mentioned this earlier on today. This is the ability to make a clone. So if I take this question right here, so here's a question, motivational applications, 2073. If I were to edit this, it's stored somewhere else. I don't have editing rights on it. It's owned by somebody. And I wouldn't be able to save this if I were not a super administrator like I am. But that doesn't mean that I may not want to be able to edit it. So how do I actually deal with editing a question that I don't have editing rights? Well, the answer to that is that you actually clone the question, which is the equivalent of copying the question, placing a copy into your area that you then have ownership rights for. So anytime that you see that question, that this double bond here, right here, that's not next to an ID number, you can clone that question. So if I click on this thing, it will clone that question. It'll tell me right now, this is because I'm a super administrator. It will tell me that after I clone the question, I'll have full editing rights to that question. This right here will tell me where I want to save that question in my question area, my library. I have a section called clone questions. That's just a generic one that pulls into it. And I can decide I want to add it to this, this course, new course, a new assignment, and I clone it. And now I've created this question right here. I'm going to move it right here. So this one here was the original question. This is the clone. It makes the copy, makes the term copy onto it. It looks the same. It acts the same because it's essentially the same, but I now have ownership rights of this question. So if I click on it, I can then edit this question if I want. Actually, no, I can't because this is part of the OPL. This is something that we're updating soon. But I would be able to edit the question because I am now the owner of this question. However, I have a history from where the question came from. So that the original intellectual property owner is able to be attributed to that question in perpetuity.